Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of Rabbi Avi Havivi's weekly Siddur class.
If anyone had a break, I hope everyone had a nice break. I had a nice break from not teaching Siddur class for a few weeks, but I'm glad to be back. And I said we'd finished the Amidah and we're going to move on to Tachanun, but I lied. We're going to linger on the Amidah one more time. There's a long passage in the Talmud about why the order of the 19 blessings is what it is. When we talked about the Amidah, I decided to not do that passage. It's kind of a long Talmudic shaggy dog story. You'll see what I mean. But then it was actually on the daily daf of Talmud in the daf yomi cycle a week ago. So I thought, okay, that's a sign that we should do it. For those who are listening to the podcast later on your exercise machine without a visual, this will be difficult, challenging, because we're going to look at text together, and I will include the text with the podcast. Bert, our podcast master, has a way of doing that, so I'll send that to him. But if you're just trying to, do it on the track or something without looking at it, it will be harder to follow. Sorry. So we talked about the order of blessings in the Amidah, and we tried to figure out, some sort of logical order that made sense as we went along. And what the Talmud is going to do is we'll see that they know what the order of 19 blessings is, and they try to make sense of that, meaning this is not an a priori, let's plan the Amidah and talk about how to organize it discussion. Rather, it is an ex post facto. Here is the order of the Amidah. Let's try to understand why it is what it is. This is in Tractate Megillah, just to set the scene, which is the tractate in the Talmud about Purim and the reading of the Megillah. And the Mishnah says that you have to, because it's an obligation to hear the entire Megillah, that you have to hear it in order, right, to fulfill your obligation. Meaning if you heard chapter 6 through the end in one minyan, and then you walk to another minyan and heard 1 through 5, you have not fulfilled your obligation. It has to be in order. Then the Talmud brings, in its associative way, a baraita, which means a source contemporary to the Mishnah, but that did not get included in the Mishnah, a Tanaitic source, which says also Shema and Hallel and the Amidah, to fulfill your obligation, you have to say them in order, in the correct order. Remember, people did not have texts in front of them, right? There was no printing. Manuscripts were expensive. Lots of people didn't know the davening. This is why the Chazan said everything aloud and people listened and said Amen. Some people might have known it. So we're talking about, let's say, saying all of Hallel by heart, and can understand how you might have davened Hallel and realize, oh, I forgot one of the paragraphs, and then go back and say it. And the Baraita says, no, can't do it that way. So people who come late to Hallel, like me, for example, always, what that means is I can't walk in, the Kahal is in the middle of singing Yevarech et Bei Israel. I quickly say the bracha, join the Kahal, then go back when they're done and say the 2 or 3 psalms that I missed. Can't do that, right? Hallel, Shema, and the Amidah need to be said in order. So you said 18 blessings of the Amidah. You realize you forgot one of them. I'm just going to go back and add it now. You can't do that. They have to be done in order. That's the setting of this passage. Okay. That's just the halachic rule. So we're not going to have a discussion about whether or not you're in favor of the halachic rule. I'm just telling you that's the halachic rule. Okay. So to fulfill your halachic obligation for these things, hearing the Megillah, the 3 paragraphs of the Shema, Hallel, and the Amidah, you have to fulfill your obligation correctly. You have to say them in order, start to finish. And if you say all of it, but out of order, it doesn't count. right? Remember in Shema, appears twice. So it'd be really easy to jump from the first paragraph to the third paragraph and then say, oh, I forgot the second paragraph. I got to go back and say Vayayim Shamoa. Can't do that. It's wrong. You have to go back to the beginning and do it all. You don't have to go back to the beginning and do it all in order. You'd actually have to go back to the second paragraph and then say the second and the third paragraph. Okay, Joanna's raising her hand, has a question already. Go ahead, Joanna.
So it's just fascinating.
Joanna, this is just a preamble I'm trying to get through, but go ahead.
I don't know. It's fascinating to me, this, in light of the fact that the paragraphs of Shema are not in sequential order in terms of like the order of their appearance in Torah.
Correct.
But yet, as a fixed liturgy,
Correct.
We have to say them in that order,
correct.
not in their
the sages
sequential
are saying
order.
Correct. The sages are saying this is a fixed liturgy. Certain fixed liturgies that you have an obligation to say, you must say them in their correct order, and not the rabbinic word in the Talmud is liserugin or biserugin, which in modern Hebrew would sort of mean responsively, but that they use it to mean out of order. Okay, now I'm going to screen share. Let's see. Hold on. Give me a moment. I'm going to get the thing. So Safaria, you can do this at home, but I'm going to send it to Bert to post. Go to Safaria, go to Talmud, go to Megillah, page 17b. All right, now I'm going to attempt to screen share, which by now I should know how to do. Here we are. Everyone got it? Okay, I can't see all of you anymore because of the size of screen. So what that means is if you have a question, I won't see your hand up, just like interrupt. Okay, someone nod that you see that. Okay, good. Oh, tefillah minalan. Tefillah here doesn't mean prayer in general. It means the Amidah, right? The Amidah, the Talmud says, this is now the Talmud. This is not the Baraita anymore. So the Baraita, the Tanaitic said, Shema and Hallel and the Amidah, you have to say in order. By the way, then the Talmud has a discussion. Why do you have to say the Shema in order? Why do you have to say the Hallel in order? Joanna's question. And now it gets to why do we have to say the Amidah in order? Ditanya, as it says in another Baraita, again, Tanaitic source, meaning from the 1st or 2nd century, but didn't make it into the official Mishnah, but it's contemporary to the Mishnah, contemporaneous to the Mishnah's era. Ditanya, as it says in a Baraita, Shimon HaPakoli, debate about what Pakoli means. Is it his place? Is it his occupation? So Simon, right? He steers Shmon Esrei brachot lifnei Rabban Gamliel ala seder b'Yavne. He arranged the 18 blessings of the Amidah before Rabban Gamliel, who was the Nasi, the head of the court, in Yavne. So this is Rabban Gamliel the second. If you remember your New Testament, there's a mention of Gamliel and the sages. That's Rabban Gamliel the first, who was Hillel's son in the time of Jesus. This is Rabban Gamliel the second, who is about the year 100-ish. He's, in general, in the Talmud, when they say Rabban Gamliel, they mean Rabban Gamliel the second. He was like the big Rabban Gamliel. Okay? So this is post-destruction of the temple. Shimon HaPakoli arranged the 18 blessings before Rabban Gamliel, meaning the head of the court, accepted that this was the order of 18 blessings. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, later a sage in Eretz Yisrael about the year 270 or 280, Ve'amrei la b'matnita tana, but some people say that it says this in a Baraita, right? So it could be said by an Amora or by a Tana. The Talmud isn't sure who said it. Me'ah ve'esrim zkenim uvahem kama nevi'im tiknu shmon esrei brachot ala seder. No, actually, 120 elders, including some prophets, arranged the 18 brachot, meaning it was not Shimon HaPakoli in Yavne in the year 100, but it was much earlier, hundreds of years earlier. Then later on, there's an argument about which is it, and the answer is, just so you know, so you're not sitting on the edge of your seat, that it was arranged by the sages and the prophets hundreds of years earlier, but it was forgotten. And so Shimon HaPakoli re-standardized what the 18 brachot were, which then, of course, became 19. So that's how the Talmud reconciles those two statements. Now we get to the Baraita, which talks about, now they cite another Baraita about the order. So again, this Baraita, which means it's maybe from the, let's just say, 2nd century-ish, accepts that the order is the order, meaning this Baraita already knows the order. It is not seeking to establish an order. It is just ex post facto saying, hey, why is this the order? And it looks at various verses in the Bible as supports. The technical term in the Talmud is asmachta, the support from the word somech, for various things in the order. Here's where we get into what I call a Talmudic shaggy dog story. Okay. Minayim shomrim avot. How do you know that we say avot first? Right? Shene'emar havu laHashem b'nei Elim. Psalm 29 starts, b'nei Elim, which is going to start, means ascribe to Hashem. Here, b'nei Elim is understood to mean, oh, mighty ones. Although in the Bible, in the Pshat, it probably means, oh, divine beings. So it's going to say, praise God, oh, mighty ones. Who are the mighty ones? Of course, the ancestors, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Uminayin she'omrim givurot. And how do you know that the second paragraph then is about God's power? Shne'emar, havu l'Hashem kavod va'oz. Oz means might, right? So ascribe to Lord, O mighty ones. This refers to the ancestors, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Ascribe to God, God's might, power. This is the theme of the second bracha, Mechayeh HaMeitim, right? Mashiva Ruach Merid HaGashem, Mechayeh HaMeitim. It's about God's power. Minayin she'omrim kedushot. How do you know that the third bracha is kedusha? Shneimar, havu l'Hashem kivahot shemo hishach havu l'Hashem behadrat kodesh. Worship God in the gloriness of his holiness. It could mean in God's temple. Kodesh could mean the temple, or here it's taken to mean holiness, right? So that's why we have Kedusha. So the opening of Psalm 29, according to the Talmud, provides us for the order of the first three brachot. Then we'll see the Talmud leaves Psalm 29 and goes elsewhere for the rest of the brachot. Everyone with me? Any questions about that? If you have a question about that, just shout it out right now.
How much of this is really what they believe to be like a sound explanation for the ordering? Or it feels to me more like they're trying to give us a mnemonic device to remember the order.
Okay. It could be, except you'll see the rest of it is totally, that was a nice mnemonic. That would fit, Joanna, for the first three. You'll see the rest is totally not a mnemonic device. It's miscellaneous verses from all over that you would not help you remember it. It would not help you as a mnemonic device. It's clear they're doing it again after the fact. They're saying this is the order. And just as we said, hey, why is this the order, right? We said that same question. Anyone looking at the Amidah, especially the middle section, would say, oh my God, there are all these blessings asking for things. Is there any rhyme or reason to it? So regardless of what the elders and the prophets thought was the order, regardless of what Shimon HaPakoli, which probably means the flax maker or flax dealer. So regardless what Shimon the flax maker or Rabban Gamliel thought was the reason for the order, the Baraita is trying to come up with reasons for the order. Okay. Umara ulamar bina achare kedusha. Okay, so the next blessing is chonein hadat. By the way, if you want, you can have your Siddur open to the, if you don't know the order by heart, you can have your Siddur open to any weekday Amidah and follow the order. So then we have chokhmah, right? Wisdom. Why does that come after Kedusha? As it says, 2 verses back to back in Isaiah, V'hikdishu et Kedosh Yaakov. I'm not going to read all the Hebrew from here on in because there's a lot of it. I'm going to stick to English, but I will do the key words in Hebrew, right? They sanctify the Holy One of Jacob, meaning God. It has the word Kadosh. And then the next verse is, and those who go astray will have bina or discernment. Okay, so the verse in Isaiah Kedusha, the next verse is Bina. All right. Umara ulamar tshuva achar bina. Why is the blessing for tshuva right after the blessing for wisdom? As it says, also in Isaiah, but a different verse. Ulvavo yavin. His heart will understand. Vishav virafalo. And then he will do tshuva and be healed. Okay, so after discernment comes tshuva. But it said, notice, vishav virafalo. He will do tshuva and then be healed, which suggests that maybe after the blessing of tshuva, we should say what? Someone shouted out. Yeah, refuah should come next, but it doesn't. Ihachi, the argument, now we're back in Aramaic, which means the Talmud is, later Talmud is breaking in Aramaic to interrupt the Braita. Okay? The Braita, notice, is in Hebrew, and this is in Aramaic. So interruption. Hey, wait. If this is the verse, then we should say refuah after tshuva. No. Answer, this doesn't make sense, because it says, v'yashov el Hashem. You do tshuva, and then God is abundantly forgiving. Okay, so after tshuva comes slicha. Gemara says, umay chazeh t'samchat smocha. You know what? Why are you relying on the order in those two verses? In that verse, you could have relied on the first thing, meaning vishav virafalo, right? So the Talmud is now arguing with, okay, you provided, I raised a question from one proof text. Why are you using this other proof text? Why does one trump the other? Answer, tiebreaker, hasoleach l'chol avonaichi, God who forgives, harofei l'chol tachaluaichi. This means, right, hagoel mishachat chayil, lememra digud. So this verse means that geula, redemption, and healing come after slicha. But wait. But it says, vishav virafalo. He will do tshuva and then get healing. Hahu lav refuah d'tachaluimhu elo refuah d'slichahu. That healing, that doesn't mean literal healing from illness. The fact that it's in the context of right after doing tshuva means it is metaphoric healing. What is metaphoric healing? It is forgiveness. So we have a Talmudic argument about which verse. So again, it's clear that the order is the order, and the Talmudic argument is trying to find out why the order is the order. See what I mean by Shaggy Dog Story? Okay. Umara ulamar geula bashvi'it. Why is geula the seventh one? So at this point, the argumentation, we had first set of three was based on the order in Psalm 29. Then we have the next set of three is based on various verses in Isaiah, from here and there in Isaiah. And now we switch set again in terms of the method. And it's why is one the seventh, and why is this one the eighth, and why is this one the ninth, rather than sequential, right? So why is Geula the seventh? Rava says, because the people will be destined in the future to be redeemed in the future, meaning Mashiach is going to come in a Shemitah year, which we're in now. So maybe Mashiach could come this year. And if not this year, I guess 7 years from now. Citing another source from elsewhere. Hey, wait, V'ha'amar, didn't you say in the 6th year there will be sounds, heavenly sounds heard? They're citing another source, not from our section of Talmud. And in the 7th year there will be wars. And after the 7th year, meaning the 8th year, then the Messiah will come. Meaning Messiah's Geula is not going to come. I have a source about what's going to happen in the end times. And it says Mashiach is not going to come in the 7th year. Mashiach is going to come in the 8th year. In the 7th year, there's going to be the cosmic battle of Gog and Magog, or something like that. The Gemara answers, remember, Rava is in Amora, right? So again, we're interrupting? Are we interrupting the Breita, or is this just a separate flow of argument? It's not clear, right? So the answer is, the wars in the 7th year that's going to take place in the future time is actually the beginning of the Mashiach process. It's the beginning of the Geula process, the redemption, and that's why this redemption is the 7th bracha. Umar ra'ul omar refuah bishmini. Why is refuah on the 8th day? You could have guessed this one from your Echad Miodea on Pesach, because on the 8th day we do Brit Milah. Brit Milah requires healing intrinsically afterwards, so that's why refuah is the 8th blessing. See, Joanna, this would not be a very helpful mnemonic to actually remember all this by heart. Umara ulomar birkat hashanim batchi'it. Why do we ask for sustenance, the blessing for a good economic year, on the 9th blessing? Amar Rabbi Alexandri, right? Notice, good precedent for Jews being named something like, Stephen or Andrew, right? Here we have a rabbi, perfectly good rabbi in the Talmud, whose name is Alexander. The Jews liked Alexander in general. They used that name a lot. Keneged mafki'ei sha'arim. Those who raise the prices of food. So there are people who raise the price of food on the 9th year of the Shemitah cycle. The 7th year, you couldn't plant anything. So the 8th year might or might not have been an abundant harvest. It's only in the 8th year when you can plant again. So in the 9th year, until the crops grow, the crop dealers who have money would jack up the prices in year 9. And there's a verse in Psalm which says, break the arm, smash the arm of the wicked. Okay, and David said this in the 9th Psalm. It's actually in the 10th Psalm. Let's not get into it, but David said this, smash the arms of the wicked, which means people who jack up prices on the 9th year, and David said it in the 9th Psalm. Now we go back, not to 7, 8, 9, but to a sequential argument. Umara ulomar kibbutz galuyot lachar birkat hashanim. Why do we say the ingathering of the exiles blessing after the blessing for sustenance? Because it says, a verse in Ezekiel, in the future time, there will be a flowering in abundance, meaning good farming economy, for Ami Yisrael, my people Israel, says God, ki kirvu lavo, because they are soon coming, right? So there's going to be abundance, and then Israel is going to come back to its land. So that's why we have the blessing for sustenance and abundance, followed by the blessing for the ingathering of the exiles. And kevan shenit gabtzu kaluyot, once the exiles are ingathered, then there will be judgment against the wicked. Remember, the next bracha is about Hashem destroy the bad guys. Okay? Kibbutz Galiyot, the next one is Din, judgment. Okay? So, because it says, when you come back, Ve'ashiva shoftayich kevarishona, I will restore your judges. Okay? So when the people come back, then the judges will be restored. Okay? Once there's judges, then the bad guys will be torn down. All right? Because the rest of this verse in Isaiah, or 2 verses later, there's Isaiah 126. See, I'm highlighting mine, right? And this is 2 verses later, Isaiah 128. The bad guys will be destroyed. Next bracha is for the righteous. Since the bad guys are destroyed, the good guys are elevated, right? As it says in Psalms, I will cut off the horns of the wicked, but the horns of the righteous will be exalted, right? Wicked torn down, righteous built up. And by the way, why are converts included in this bracha? Okay, from the verse in Vayikra, right? 1932, there's a verse about honoring the elders. We would assume that's kind of the righteous. And then the next verse is about the laws of not mistreating the ger. And that's why the ger is included, the convert is included in the blessing for the tzaddikim. And where will this happen? That the righteous will be elevated, of course, in Jerusalem. And since Jerusalem will be rebuilt, David will come, right? And here's the verse. They will come back and they will return to God and David will be there. And since David will be there, then will be rebuilding of the temple. Shnemar, when they will come out to my holy mountain and they will worship in my temple. Okay. By the way, that refers to Shema Kolenu, right? Temple is Shomea Tfilah, right? Because Tfilah takes place in the temple. So we're up to Shomea Tfilah. We finished the middle section. We're up to the last three: Ritzei, Hoda'ah, and Sim Shalom. Okay, so because there's prayer, there's going to be worship, as it says, "I will accept their sacrifices." And once there is worship, then there's thanksgiving. As it says, the one who sacrifices offers a thanks offering. And why does Birkat Kohanim come next, right after that, after saying thank you? It says that then in Vayikra, in the passage which talks about the dedication of the Mishkan, it says, Aaron blessed the people, raised up his hands and blessed the people after he had done the sacrifice. And then the argument is, wait, is this before the sacrifice or after the sacrifice? And the answer is no, it's after he did the sacrifice. Okay, well, hold on. If Aaron blessed the people after the sacrifice, then maybe after Ritzei, which is about restoration of sacrifices, you should do Birkat Kohanim, as opposed to us. We do Ritzei, then Modim, Thanksgiving, and then Birkat Kohanim. So maybe that means if Aaron did the sacrifice and then did the blessing, maybe we should do priestly blessing right after bracha number 17. No, because it says Zoveach Todah, right? He offers a thanksgiving sacrifice. So he sacrifices a thank offering, right? So it'd be sacrificing 17 and then thank you, 18, Ritzei, and then Modim. The Gemara does the same thing it did before. Hey, you choose to say it's based on this order of verses. Why not argue on the other order of verses? What made you pick this sequence rather than that sequence? And the Gemara answers, well, it makes sense because sacrificing and gratitude are sort of the same thing. They're one matter. Okay. Then, why do we say Sim Shalom after Birkat Kohanim? Notice in this, that when we talked about the Amidah, we said historically Sim Shalom is probably an expansion of Birkat Kohanim. Notice in this discussion in the Talmud, conceptually, they seem to see Birkat Kohanim and Sim Shalom as two separate things. Okay? So why do we say Sim Shalom after the priestly blessing? Because it says in Numbers, where it gives the commandment to the Aaronites to bless the people, it says, V'samu et shmi al b'nei Yisrael v'ani avarchem, place my name on the children of Israel and I will bless them. What is the bracha? The bracha that the Kadosh Baruch Hu blesses us is shalom, as it says, Hashem oz la'amo yitain, Hashem yivarech et amo b'shalom, which takes us back, Joanna, to where? To Psalm
29.
The end. Right. So we had the proof text for the first three from the beginning of Psalm 29, and in a very neat kind of way, the Talmud brings in the last verse of Psalm 29, right, again at the end to say bracha is shalom. So after the priestly blessing, God's blessing is shalom. By the way, this is what I told you is coming. Since 120 elders, including some prophets, organized the order, why did Shimon HaPakoli have to come around hundreds of years later and do it? They forgot the order and they reestablished it. Just want to read another line, which is not formally part of this, the order. Mikan ve'elach asur lo saber b'shiko shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which means from here on in, you may not add praises. This is assumed to mean, I'm going to close my screen share right now. This is assumed to mean, Talmud assumes to mean, and you can't add more blessings than this. Meaning, you might say, hey, there are other blessings that I'd like to add in my Amidah. No. Beyond this, we do not add praises. It's a little bit ironic because the Amidah is like so many praises, and it seems a little arbitrary. So, of course, it is an ex post facto thing saying, this is the Amidah, it's fixed. No one can say all of God's praises. This is the amount of praises that we say. You may not add to it. You want to add a 20th bracha because you think in the middle of the Amidah and the Bakashot, there should be one other that Shimon HaPakoli and Rabban Gamliel forgot to add that you consider to be completely essential. No, you can't do that. Okay, I'm going to take 4 minutes until 8:50 for question and comment. So this is why I referred to it as a shaggy dog story, because it's this long drawn out thing. It's clear, verses from here, verses from there. It's clear that this is an after the fact attempt to find some rhyme or reason for the order. Larry, then Joanna.
I have a theological question.
Okay.
So this is halacha?
What is halacha? What's
the order?
This?
The order?
Meaning you can't change the order? Is that what you mean by that? Tell me what you mean.
And you can't, you couldn't, change the order, or if you forgot a blessing, put it at the end.
Correct.
So you don't have to answer this now. You can maybe guide me where, or we can discuss another time. What's the consequence in this case of, like, for example, you said that you come into the Hallel late, and then you join the Kahal, and then you go back and you catch up.
The short answer is you did not fully, properly fulfill the mitzvah. That's the answer. It's just like if I didn't, you're supposed to say Shema up to a particular time. If you didn't say it before that time, you should still say the Shema. For the Shema, by the way, it's explicit in Halacha. You receive the reward for saying the Shema, but you do not receive the credit for saying Shema on time. We gave you points. You don't get all the points, right? So the question is, if you asked a posek, a religious decisor, which I am not, okay, I said the Amidah out of order. Do I get some points or do I get 0 points? I do not know what that posek would say. The posek would surely say, it would be better for you to go back to where by the way, you don't have to go back to the beginning. You have to go back to where you went out of order and then complete it from there. In general, for most of these things, it's not that you have to go back to the beginning. You have to go back to where you went astray and do it correctly from there on in. But there are certain things for which the punishment is stoning. This is not in that category. There are certain things for which the punishment is karet, you're cut off from your people. This is not in that category. It's just that you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah correctly. Joanna, then Alan.
So as we were studying the Amidah, we discussed at various points about inserting your own tefillah, places where it's appropriate to insert your own tefillah.
Yes.
So if I'm understanding correctly from this, what you have to do if you're going to do that is figure out which bracha your words belong in and encapsulate them within that bracha without adding a bracha of your own.
Correct.
Is that
Correct.
the correct understanding?
Correct. Meaning for each bracha, you say Baruch Atah Hashem as is. Plus, one more thing, Joanna, it's not in this passage, but in other stuff that we studied, you do that only in the middle 13 brachot, the bakashot, or in the Elohai Netzor slot. The first three, halachically, the first three and the last three are in a different category. You're not supposed to change them, which is why, as a threading the needle, there are some people who want to be egalitarian, who add the imahot, but who still say, in the first blessing, but they still say Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avraham. They don't say Magen Avraham ufoked sarah, or poked Avraham ve'ezrat sarah, right? Because there is a halacha that you don't change the chatimot, the closing. So there are people who say Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, but they still say Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avraham. All right. Rabbi Rembaum's responsum, accepted by the Rabbinical Assembly, is that when you add the imahot, then you change it to Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avraham Ufoked Sarah. But not everyone accepts that, because there are people who say, no, the halachic principle is for all 19 brachot, you may not change the chatimah, which means the Baruch Atah Hashem closing formula. So let us say, Joanna, Birkat Hashanim, you want to pray for a good job interview and a raise in your salary and good crops, right? And a good economy and a good stock market, right? You can add all that in Birkat Hashanim, but you still must say Baruch Atah Hashem Mivarech Hashanim. You can't say Baruch Atah Hashem who makes a good stock market Umivarech Hashanim. You're not allowed to change the Chatimah. Okay? So you insert in the paragraphs before the Baruch Atah Hashem in the middle 13 or Elohai Nitzur. But you can't add a 20th bracha. Alan.
In this discussion...
Sorry, I just want to say you can't add a 20th bracha in traditional halacha. If you say, I am non-halachic and I do not accept the halacha as binding, then that's a different category. But I'm just saying in the traditional halachic system. Alan.
Is there reference in the Talmud with respect to the 19th bracha that was added with respect to what we were going on here? And in any case, and the follow-up to that is, why was it inserted in the place that it was?
So we talked about that. If you'd have to go find it in the podcast, but we talked about which bracha and that it's a misconception that it's the bad guys, about the heretics. The Talmud, there's a passage in Talmud that thinks it's about the heretics is the extra bracha. It turns out it is not the extra bracha, and it was the Babylonians who divided one bracha into two. And we know that because we have a version in the Cairo Geniza where the one bracha is not added into two, broken into two, and that is Bonei Yerushalayim and Matzmiach Keren Yeshua. Those are the two that were originally one. So I want to refer you back to find that podcast where we talked about it and looked at those texts.
Thank you.
Sure. Michael Ozer.
Well, I just have a comment. I'm just really happy that we're not in Israel, and it's not the 9th year, so I don't have to go to the store and break the arm of the guy who's the guy who's selling the produce now.
The Makolet who's jacking up the prices. Exactly. Okay. All right. And on that note, let us go forth today and all be righteous, not jack up the prices and not break anyone's arm. So I believe next week we will go on. Is there anything? Let me just see if there's anything. I haven't looked ahead. I want to ascertain there's nothing weird about next week. Nope. God willing, see you next week.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.